Hi, welcome everyone. So glad you're here. We're really excited to share our webinar on our new course with the University of Washington, the Communication Leadership Program, AI and Creative Workflows, what marketers need to know in 2026. We can start with some introductions and feel welcome to post in the chat. We'll be checking it throughout the session today and answering questions as they come up. So let us know as we go. So my name is Laura Bradshaw. I'm really excited to be here. I'm an affiliate instructor within the Communication Leadership Program, and I teach AI courses with my co-instructors here, with Jay Howard and Sam Tang, as well as some other courses on content design and AI generation. But I'll kick it off to my colleague Sam to introduce himself, and we'll go from there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Tang. I'm also one of the instructors of this course, and we're really happy to be launching this kind of content because we think it's so valuable just for our economy and professional work and knowledge work and intersecting that with communication, leadership, as well as technology. I'm a senior affiliate instructor at ComLead, and I also teach other courses on social media and foundations of branding. And I also want to pass it to Jay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Howard. I'm an artist in residence here at the University of Washington Program in Communication Leadership. And I'm very happy to be here and equally excited to be designing this course and presenting the course with Lara and Sam. We have a lot to talk about. It's exciting times. The other courses that I teach here are in our program. One is called Brand Values and Creativity, and the other is called Stakeholder Mindset and Communication. So with that, we can move on from there.
So we are introducing our AI-powered creative workflows for marketing and communications. We'll make sure you'll have more moments throughout this webinar today in case you want to take a picture, sign up for the course, or just learn more about it. So we'll reference this throughout. So don't worry if you miss it now. But we're going to launch into basically talking about why we're here, the moment we're in today. With generative AI and all things artificial intelligence. And so we'll start that conversation with a series of discussion questions. So this is more like a kind of round robin between Sam, Jay, and myself. So I'll pose it to you, Jay and Sam. Let's start this conversation. So when we say someone is skilled in AI, what are we actually describing? Is it tool fluency? Is it judgment, strategic judgment, or a combination of the two, or something else entirely? And let's start with Sam.
I think because AI tools are so rapidly evolving, it almost feels like every week, every month that goes by, something else is happening. And so it's impossible to be up on whatever the latest thing is when it comes to technology, especially in this field right now. And so for me, when I think of someone as being skilled with AI, I'm thinking about someone who is actively engaging with these things and feeling comfortable that they don't need to be an expert in it, but they're willing to try it out and they're willing to see how it operates within their workflows. And so I think tool fluency is really broad. You can just be kind of tool adjacent, or maybe even dip your toes in. You could be tool friendly. And I think that's already a great way to kind of welcome this powerful technology into our workflow processes.
And
Yeah,
Jay.
and I would say, sure, Laura. I would say when we say, echoing what Sam was saying, when we say somebody is skilled in AI, it's not exactly a specific skill. It's, as we know, it's changing every day. And if it's, hopefully it's something that we engage with on a regular basis because there are new things coming out hourly and new things that we can experiment with and integrate into our workflows. And it's exciting times. What we'll also see throughout the course of this webinar is that your curiosity is the ultimate skill, and your point of view is the ultimate currency that we have in this course, because that's what makes these tools so valuable, is that you can take what's in your head and translate it using AI into something that is really effective, that really reflects who you are and what your point of view is, especially when it revolves around advertising or marketing products and services.
That's great. That's so helpful, Jay and Sam. I think for a little context too, for all of you here, we had, some of you may know, we launched a first course in 901, which is this course 902 is kind of a continuation of that. So very much, thinking about creative professionals and communications and marketing, and diving deeper into, especially over the last 3 years, right, as generative AI has really just taken, has flourished within this landscape of work and learning. And so, to Jay and Sam's point, the way how we become skilled in I think really, of course, yes, there is a technical tool element to this, but I think the bigger picture too, and this is probably what we're going to get into, I think, in a little later with some of the questions, is really thinking about the way we approach AI, right, with knowledge base that we have learned, we have gained over the years. This is really key. So there's core competencies, around communications, around marketing, with research, writing, editing, you name it. These are really part of how we think about skills. So in a way, it's not just skilled in AI, it's really skills and like core foundational skills, that, will be evergreen. So I think that's a really, that's an important point that, the three of us really have thought a lot about and have tried to approach the course in that way. So I think we can go, to the next question. So core competencies. So what core communications competencies become more important as AI handles more of the execution and not less? Sam, do you want to start?
Yes, I think I always give this analogy because we're using AI as kind of a bucket term because AI is a tool, it's a software, it's a technology, it's also like a large language model. So we've been hearing about all these models, and so I always give this analogy about AI as a tool, an application, or software. And so back in the day when these really powerful photo editing softwares came out, we all know of our favorite ones, and people will do these funny things back in the day of putting your head on a different person's body, and it's or editing out that thing that's like, cluttering up your photo. And people were very worried at that time as well about this advanced tool use. What would it do to our source of truth? What will it do to the way we capture images, or we try to make a point or like post content online? What will that do? And a lot of the conversation and fear around AI has also been kind of like framed in a similar way. And so I think when we focus in on core competencies, these core competencies of these skills of communication and leadership that we've always been championing as professionals, as well as our creative process, becomes even more important because not everyone still knows how to use those photo editing softwares, and not everyone is like photoshopping strange photos or doing things. It kind of becomes a moot point. um, the tool ultimately ends up serving what the creative needs are and what the workflow needs are. And I think that's what's important. Is like, can you think critically? Can you express things in an original way? Can you meet the goal of your brand or your audience or your campaign? I think those end up becoming more of the core competencies.
Yeah, and to echo what Sam was saying, those are the things that are unique to you as an individual and as a professional, is your AI resistant capabilities, your judgment, your discernment, your creativity, your empathy. These are things that AI cannot do. And we have to remember that AI does not have a point of view. It's you as the human being have the point of view, but you have this very powerful tool to realize things that can be very helpful professionally, that kind of merge this online world with this offline world, and that are unique to you as somebody who is working in an organization. So I think it becomes more about your thinking process and using AI to help you process your thoughts and organize your thoughts, and then to do potential executions or prototypes of what you envision as the answer to a particular creative brief or particular business problem. That you're using a very, very powerful tool, but it's really your point. At the end of the day, it's your point of view. It's not coming from the AI itself.
That's such an important point, Jay and Sam. I think about one of the classes I teach for graduate students is on doing conversational AI design. And I think this is such an important point because, when we think about AI or generative AI technologies, I think the communication component, it becomes a design element, right? So it's baked in and it's part of, the way we as human beings interact with the tools, but also, right, again, this is something that the communication skills that we have gained and developed and our point of view and creativity, these are all components that we bring to these tools, to these technologies. They don't suddenly disappear or go out the window. And of course, there's evolution with that too, and shifts and changes. And this is kind of the moment we're in, right? But the core communication skills of being able to have discernment, judgment, evaluation, research competencies, writing, editing, this is all part of it, and we hold those skills within us, and we use, right, part of the framework right now is really thinking about, okay, how do we use AI in a way that makes sense, that leverages our skill set, but is not totally offloading, right? And we'll get into that conversation about cognitive offloading. Not totally offloading the skills that we have, but using it in a way that allows maybe some freedom, or at least some freeing up of thinking, of discernment, of doing a workflow potentially in a different way that can be more helpful or efficient. So this is all to say that, I think we're in this moment where your communication skills are really, really relevant, and they're not going away. This is still core to the technology and to who we are as humans. Okay. So another, I think, a really central topic to this course, but in general, right? I think a lot of creative professionals are dealing with this and thinking through it. So what makes a workflow meaningful rather than just efficient? And how do you design for both? And Sam, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this.
I think we've been focusing on workflows because it's about process. We're starting to realize that not a single tool can get us to our end result meaningfully. And so that's why we were saying here, what makes a workflow meaningful? And I've been thinking a lot about brand goals. I've also been thinking a lot about what kinds of content or communication or messaging or storytelling resonates with a priority audience segment. Our audiences have become so important in the age of the internet as well as the age of social media. We've even been hearing big platforms and big media brands talking about their own core entertainment service as a second screen experience, comes second to what's going on our smartphones and social media feeds. And so there is a battle for audience attention right now. And so I think what makes a workflow meaningful is whether or not that workflow produces a creative artifact or creative outcome or a production outcome that resonates with audiences. And how do we design for both? I think that we have to make it about our audiences and the stories that we tell, and then just apply our legacy and our traditional professional workflows to them to make sure that they stay efficient.
Agreed. It does. It's a workflow is only as good as the people who are overseeing the workflow. So to make it meaningful, efficiency is something that is the goal of many organizations. Let's be efficient. But I think echoing what Sam was saying, what we want to focus on is the content and the human connection and the empathy that comes out. These AI tools are amazing. They can bring in 1 million data points per second and generating an image or things like that. But at the end of the day, the target audience is a human being who has spending power and consumer power and is going to make some kind of transaction. We need to go the extra the additional 50%, AI can bring us 50% of the way to make that human connection, like Sam is saying. So we're realizing that a million data points are data points that are in the past, but what we're aiming for is a connection that's in the present and in the future, which, yes, there can be some predictive analytics, but what we're trying to encourage is that you have your own unique point of view based on your real world experience and your lived experience and professional experience. And we want to make sure that that is what's driving everything. And we're using AI as a tool.
These are such great points. I think about this so much through some of the literature and research that's coming out also about, the discussion we're having around cognitive offloading. So if you are, paying attention to AI conversations, this is a term that gets used a lot. And rightfully so, right? It's part of a deeper conversation, and not just with AI, right? I think the thing with cognitive offloading is we could apply this to many different technologies, right? This is kind of part of our human experience with tools. But I think what's interesting with some of the more recent studies around cognitive offloading, and the way we potentially offload certain pieces of work to essentially make our artifacts or projects or work easier. It's interesting to think about it now, where I think there's a lot more nuance. And not to say that there wasn't nuance 2 years ago or 3 years ago when generative AI was really launching into the consumer field. But it's something to think about as far as as the way, right, it gets back to Sam and Jay's point. It's so much of it is about the way we as human beings, right, approach our work and what we are bringing to the process of doing this sort of work. And so, I think there's something to be said, right? The concern, especially from an education standpoint, is, offloading core competencies, right? Like writing, like having AI write your essay for you, or like write your report. So there, obviously that's, there's a lot of concern with that, and rightfully so, and how, right, it impacts our skill sets. At the same time, I think with some of the studies that are coming out around cognitive offloading and how to make something meaningful, is really, it goes back to understanding what you are offloading and why. So, I think this is something that we try to approach in the class, like basically the modules we're teaching for this course, in the artifacts that we're producing, but really, again, about the process that we're undertaking, or that you will undertake, right? And producing a market research report and doing a one-page, creative brief to artifacts that you're creating, right? To creating guidelines around responsible use. It really comes down to understanding, for example, in the research process, maybe you have AI help with some of the preliminary desk research, right? As far as helping with gathering certain sources. And this is where, again, we don't totally offload it, right? We have to verify. And this is something I know Jay and Sam talk a lot about as well, is that we, as part of the workflow, we have to understand where we put guardrails in and why. And again, like what we are offloading, but then when we are offloading, what leaves space for us to then make more critical judgments and thinking, and frees up the space, right, to make discernments about, maybe there's a potential to think about a deeper research problem or an argument, because we're not having to do as much deep dive into, having to go through all these databases, right, to find these research studies and sources, right? We still do some of that, but I think one of the ways to potentially think about the way we use AI and approach it is how to use it in a way that is meaningful, right? That we're not short-circuiting or shortcutting ourselves, but also adds in an element of efficiency, where, again, it's not to just make things fast, but it's to help us maybe get to a higher order of thinking. And this is part of what some of the studies go into in more detail. Okay. Ooh, this is a good one too. I feel like this dovetails really well into the discussion we just had. So what makes AI outputs high quality, so aligned to process versus low quality, so the AI slop discussion. And so let's start, Sam or Jay, either one, because I know you both have a lot you've written and said about this.
Go ahead, Sam.
Okay. I think what's so funny about this kind of cultural space that we're in right now is that collectively we've kind of created this new term, this new colloquial of slop. We call it AI slop. And I think what's happening is that there's already an inherent bot-like or spammy nature to certain things on the internet or certain things on social. And it just kind of creates this cluttering of the content and the information that humans are already looking for in these spaces of community, interest category, sharing, memes. And memes are packaged pieces of information that people share and evolve over time, and comes from a 1976 essay on memetics, which is kind of like this information version of genetics, these small pieces of information that transmit and evolve over time. And so when we look at how now AI is able to generate a large amount of output, whether that's text output or image output or video output, and it has errors, inherent errors in it, and it is low quality. We've all seen the AI examples of, a famous actor eating pasta, or we've all seen the jokes about it, AI tools trying to generate images and videos of hands, and then the hands are not well formed or not correctly formed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of demonstrations of what slop can be. And I think what's important here is, again, is just to reduce this understanding of AI as a tool. It is merely just a tool. People can Photoshop things badly, just like they can use Excel and spreadsheets badly. And so output that is high quality and high quality work and high quality deliverables always have to be aligned to creative process and have professional process and professional guardrails. That is just always is a thing. And low quality is when those guardrails aren't there, those quality gates aren't there, that discernment or that adherence to research or adherence to brand values or audience strategy, that's not there. And I think that AI on its own can already generate very delightful examples, very rapid prototypes. And we can also show those later. And we also demonstrate that throughout the course. But I think just a quick use of a software tool without critical thinking, without professional or creative direction, I think that's what ends up constituting a slop. Because ultimately, we don't want whatever content we make to devolve into noise, because having
Mm-hmm.
noise also clutters up a signal that is in our internet and social spaces that we're trying to communicate in. So it just creates clutter. And so I think that's ultimately kind of what makes AI slop versus what allows it to be part of a high quality process to a workflow.
And just echoing what Sam was saying, that the the AI slop that we talked to, in my opinion, represents a short circuit. It's a jumping to the end result without doing any of the work. So as I say to my students, complexity is really, really easy. We can use an AI tool and generate all kinds of artifacts very, very fast. But simplicity is very hard. And simplicity is where we're doing the heavy lifting. We're talking offline, we're researching, we're evaluating, distilling ideas. And that takes a lot of work and a long time. And that's where the tools come in, is they help our thought process as individuals and help us get to a unique outcome that can only come from us. So the illusion sometimes of the AI tools is that I can do a presentation very quickly and I can show it to people.
Mm-hmm.
And as Sam said, that doesn't mean it has any human connective quality that will make a consumer or encourage a consumer to purchase a product or service. So the other thing that I tell students is, you can have a bad idea and execute it very quickly, and then do prototyping and launch it into public spaces online. But a bad idea in a lot of places is still a bad idea. So if you haven't done the work ahead of time and used AI as an assistant for you to get your point of view straight, to connect the neurons in your brain, which is unique to you, to benefit your clients, then you're not doing the whole job. So the idea with the creative workflows is to do the lifting so that you do get to the creative concept and you articulate what's really coming from you. You don't defer to the AI. It's really an assistant. It's not the driver or anything. The workflows can look from a distance really impressive, and the storyboards and the artifacts we generate can look impressive. But when we move in closer, if I'm a client, I really eyeball things, then I start seeing mistakes. Start seeing lapses in thinking, things that are not grounded in reality. And that's what we don't want. So we just want to use these tools to our benefit so that we can realize the unique, point of view that each of us as individuals and as teams have.
Yeah, this such a, I think both, I agree with both Sam and Jay. I mean, such a thoughtful discussion, and and it's something that we're all dealing with. I think what becomes interesting too with AI slop, as part of like the social cultural discourse right now is, it's a perception thing, right? Like both Jay and Sam were pointing to this, but it's so much, you can think about, I think there's studies on this as well now too, where, you see, right, how people or coworkers, for example, right, outsource emails, right, have AI generate the email. Or if you received an email that is, AI generated, right, this is part of the slop discourse. So there is definitely this humanness element in the conversation. And obviously, right, like we can think about this as well, that can shift, right, like depending on the technology and our relationship to the technology and what we perceive as authentic. And that's a bigger conversation. But I think, right, the moment we're in right now, right, where there's this perception of AI doing the work, right, doing this very human work, and being obvious, right, or at least having these indicators of it having this AI-ness, is really important point, right? And part of the conversation. I know this is also like in the hiring world, right? The conversation around resumes, right? And generating basically any sort of career content, right? There's so many tools that can, an AI can do your resume, can do your cover letter, right? And I feel like I see countless like video and think piece, right, about hiring managers and really everyone encountering, right, so many AI generated content pieces like resumes and letters, and how there's this craving for just being human in the process. And so I think, to Jay and Sam's point, this is part of that larger conversation. And again, like, how do you retain the humanness, right? Your original thinking, the argument you're trying to make, right, and really the qualities of your voice, right? This is so critical to the moment we're in. And I think this gets into deeper conversations around storytelling as well, but being able to have a voice, right, that is something that I know professional students are deeply reflecting on, and searching for how to retain or obtain. But we can go on to the next question, but this is opening up a whole a good can of worms. Okay, so this is also part of that conversation. So how do you balance precision with creative flexibility when using AI? And we'll start with Sam.
There's this technical term trying to describe AI and large language models and all of these different AI models and tools, that it is probabilistic. And if you've, we explain in our course a little bit about how AI works underneath the hood. And we call it probabilistic because it uses a lot of math, a lot of matrix multiplication and weights, as you might have heard it. These little fine-tuned weights, trillions of them, in fact, these small parameters that then statistically calculate, or uses math to probabilistically calculate, what should the next thing be? What should the next word be? What should the next pixel be? And so it always is going to give you kind of something a little bit different. And so it's not particularly precise. And yet it has this wonderful creative flexibility, this wonderful remixed quality of being able to turn something into a photo, to a line drawing, back into a watercolor illustration, and back to a 3D rendering. And we have very cool demonstrations of that later. And so this is a great question. How do we take a traditional deterministic workflow process or a tool that is very stable, same inputs, same function, same outputs, like using a calculator every single time, versus you can use an AI tool and it gives you 100 different drafts of that are always a little different of an email or something, or a report or something. So how do you balance this? And I think that this has been a really important thing, because ultimately professionals need a process where they're able to take a probabilistic tool or a tool with a lot of creative flexibility, and how do we get it to produce the same thing or similar things every single time, that we can make meaningful progress in our workflows as predictable, reliable, trustworthy. And I think the short answer is a lot of process, a lot of framework. And what Lara, Jay, and I are very proud to have done in this course, 902 AI-powered creative workflows, is that we've created this wonderful, very modern, forward-facing framework that gives you a practical application of these guardrails. So, because you're just going to say, what am I going to do? And we just talk on and on and on about what to do. And we provide lecture and resource and examples. And it also retains that creative flexibility. So it enhances your own critical thinking. It allows you to look at it from a different kind of evaluative process that's kind of modern with these tools in mind. And also it allows you to feel like, oh, I can finally trust these tools that have been maybe given a bad rap or have been shown a little bit too much slop examples on social media, things that really make high performing teams nervous. This is really our goal when designing a course like this.
It is. That's what we're trying to do, is to be able to create a structure which balances precision so that the ideas are flowing from us, and the AI is also giving us input so that we can develop and riff off of the creative ideas that we have and see which ones work and don't work. That being said, the structure itself, the AI itself is what it is. It's a tool, and the ideas are coming from us. There's a observation that many have about AI in terms of generative AI and imagery, that it does something called a regression to the mean. So that different AI engines will eventually, if you give them all the same inputs, eventually you'll end up at the same image at the very end of the processing, right? And that's what we don't want, because especially in marketing and communications, you want a differentiated form of communication. You do not want regression to the mean. And so we have to balance that with the creative flexibility that our inputs from our minds and from our coworkers' minds are going to look at different iterations of things, which will provide us as the humans and the people in the driver's seat about what the next idea could be, and then use that to see what a potential execution could look like. So that's the creative flexibility part. But as Sam was saying, the source of the idea and the source of the insights that we're coming up with about a product or service are coming from us as individuals, or us as a human team working in an organization.
That's such great points. I know, to add to that a little bit, where, in the course, we have a focus on responsible AI as well, which, we are, our colleague, Chung Liao, teaches and does a guest lecture on this topic, especially around, thinking about precision, creative flexibility with image generation. And this is obviously part of a much bigger conversation. As many of you know, right, large language models are highly biased, right? The data sets are highly biased. We're human beings, right? It's taken from all over, many different sources. And so this is, again, something that, as Sam and Jay have talked about, we think about frameworks, right? This is so key to, how do you develop something creatively, but also have precision, and also being responsible about it, like being in a leadership position, but also having discernment and judgment about, for example, the images you're creating, especially if you're representing a certain population, right, or humans. These bring up deeper ethical considerations that we talk throughout the course about. but let's go on for the sake of time. I know we have a couple more questions. Okay, so what's a simple way to start creative prototyping? And I'll start with Sam because I know you have a lot to say on this.
I think a great way to start is to jump in the tool or that you're already using, or if you're not using the tool yet, maybe try out one of the free ones. I know that there are many of the large legacy software companies have already created easy to access tools that your organizations may have already given you approval to try out. So a great way to start is just by using the tool, and you don't have to generate anything complex like a movie or a photo shoot or a storyboard. You can just say hello to it and say, hey, can you help me revise an email? I think that we've already seen that workflow many times. Sometimes I like to even just have it help me write greeting cards. I think that's a very simple, high context way to demonstrate whether or not I can clarify an idea. And of course, I think the majority of us are also on LinkedIn. I think it's also helpful to generate a LinkedIn post or a LinkedIn summary. And it doesn't have to be mind blowing or clickbaity or anything. I think it's just a way to, can I get a tool in a relatively simple workflow process to reflect and start to align to the way I already communicate, and just to be honest and transparent, and then maybe over time to pull out something that's exciting and new, or to highlight or prioritize something that I'm very proud of for myself. And I think another way to start creative prototyping, if you're already like, hey, I already do a lot of generating of text, maybe try some of the image models as well. Again, these large software companies are also including and launching image models attached as well. So they have modes where it says, hey, I'd like to generate an image. And then you can start with something simple. And if time allows, we have some creative examples that we've used very plain language to demonstrate. So really excited to show everyone that. But I want to also pass it off to Jay.
Thanks, Sam. Jumping into the tool is a really great way to start with prototyping, and there's no rules around this. So for example, if you have an image in your mind about something that could be in a brand film, but it's not connected to anything else, there's no rules against you typing in what your prompt is to have the tool generate an image of what it is you had in your mind. And maybe that will spur you on to the next idea, or it will help you develop more ideas. So a lot of it is not having fear or restraint about using the tools, whether you're using them for copy or writing emails or generating an image. There is no hard and fast way that you're supposed to be doing creative prototyping. So a lot of it's about not being shy and just letting loose and having it be a participant in your brainstorming. If it's just an image or a fragment of a sentence or something, anything, it can work with anything. So that quality of the tools and the generative AI to help you in small ways and in big ways, it doesn't mean you have to jump to the end and have a complete creative campaign in your head before you get to use it. You can just jump into it immediately and it will help you start ideating. That's the kind of beauty of it.
That's so helpful. I think Sam, do you want to share some examples? Just because I think that's it's such a helpful way to see kind of what we're talking about, and to get a sense too of what you potentially will be working on in the course too.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to have come up with some of these creative demonstrations and examples. I think that's also part of how we feel comfortable demonstrating this kind of more complex creative workflow. Because, this new course is all about answering the question, well, we have professionals that are highly discerning, highly experienced, and they want to be able to generate things that are usable, that are eventually can go into client delivery, can eventually go public. So we're really excited about this course. Again, we worked very, very hard on it. It's a 7-week course and classes start on May 11th. And we would invite you to check out the registration page. And so I want to, before we run out of time, I want to show a couple of creative examples. So this is the one that I always demonstrate. And Garfield the cat is a lovable, chubby orange cat. It's always been very near and dear to my heart for a really long time. And I also thought that recently the Marvel Cinematic Universe has created such so many different creative branches to it. And so this is an older example using an older Mid-Journey model, 6.1. And I gave it a very simple prompt. I just wrote this short sentence: create images of Garfield the cat as a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I didn't say anything else about Garfield. I didn't say anything else about this Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it was able to generate the correct orange chubby cat in various alternative forms in kind of what we see as like superhero, sci-fi genre type things. We already see kind of costuming, and we see special effects, and we see an expression, and we see a background setting. So this is really interesting that these models are already so powerful in their ability to generate imagery as well as attach it to a semantic map, a large language model, to understand the context of what these things are. And recently, I just pulled this same prompt again, but I used a newer model. And we can see that there is a difference in the coherence to the prompt and the variation to the prompt. And I added a short sentence, include a few villain designs as well. And it was able to kind of generate a totally different cohesive set of images that I think it's higher quality because it adheres to the orange cat a little bit better. It still has kind of like a lot of generic superhero, and now it's included some super villains. You might recognize some of these themes. And when we think about AI for creative prototyping, think of creative prototyping not necessarily as brainstorming, but as just a quick demonstration of an idea so you understand how to approach it. And I know we're coming up on time, but this is another example that I always demonstrate in UW. So UW has our Alaskan Malamute dog mascot named Dubs. And in the past, I've used this ice cream social style example. And so again, I used plain language. You can see the prompt here. It's a little bit long, but I'm not going to read it. And AI was able to very quickly generate for me in just a few minutes these high fidelity images. And of course, I had to use a little production language. I had to be specific in the creative, but this is not something that is difficult to do. Anyone can do this. And so I said, render it in the style of 3D animation. I gave it a little bit of background of exactly what the dog is supposed to be. I said, please dress the dog in this nice purple shirt. And somehow the model already understood University of Washington branding and colors. And it also understood kind of like the cherry blossoms and the collegiate buildings and things like that. And so I was able to expand on this very quickly by saying, well, what if we created more social posts? And so I've crafted this storyline of, we see this progression of images that like the ice cream social is on, and then now here's Dubs handing out ice cream, and then oh no, we've got some inclement weather. I mean, Seattle weather is never that severe, but it's kind of funny that I made oh, it's a storm alert, but then now it's like, yay, the ice cream social is back on. We're inside of the beautiful UW libraries. And I thought it was a little bit humorous that I also specified that the truck be placed indoors inside of the building. I mean, that would probably never happen in real life. But we're able to kind of see the variety of these kinds of things that can be done in a very short period of time. Now, these are not delivery ready assets because there's a lot of errors. If you look very closely, the phones are also a very strange size. The profile picture on the UI for the social assets are also a little bit odd. There are some cases where there's just a lot of errors in detail. And I'm going to flip through the subsequent examples very, very quickly. So I hope you'll follow. But I've also created other fictional examples. For example, gold cat landscaping. And you can see this prompt here. I'm using, again, a 3D animation rendering. But if we're using this as a character creation for a real business, for example, I can generate these assets and I can build upon them, and I can say, well, can we generate an infographic that we can share on social media or on LinkedIn? And so it's changed the art style to create a completely different kind of infographic. I can also generate real world examples. What if it was like merch or a little piece of swag that we get, a refrigerator magnet? This is very common for landscaping companies. And so it's rendered it in a different art style, and it's also rendered it in a photorealistic way to look like, what would this thing look like actually stuck on a refrigerator? I've also generated a postcard. This is common, a mailer it's very common to receive. And I said, use something that's handwritten. So this looks great. I think this filled in a lot of creative details that I normally would not have done. And I was even able to expand this into, what if we had plush toys that we gave away? And what if we made more social media collaterals? And so I was able to generate all of these variations while adhering to the original character, Soul, Gold Cat, with the red flannel shirt and the clipboard. So I thought that was really interesting. And I want to go a little faster here, but I also created something called Dino's Beachwear. So I created a fictional character of Dino, who is a graphic designer, but decided to create a beachwear company. And I was able to create all of these real photorealistic product renderings of what it would look like if we were to apply some of these designs. And so I thought these were very high quality, very high fidelity. Again, I used plain language. My prompts were also not very long, and these models were able to generate and fill in the gaps really, really well. And now we're seeing a mock-up of a mobile e-commerce store as well as more social media posts. So I really hope that we were able to demonstrate kind of like the speed, the creativity, and also being able to leverage a framework that allows us to stay within a professional guideline. So we really hope that everyone is excited as we are about creating this course and possibly taking this course. Classes start May 11th. And Laura J., if you could remind us some more kind of details about the course.
Yeah, so as Sam just demonstrated, we have 4 modules that we're going to cover. So as you can imagine, right, we're doing a lot of creative workflow mock-ups. So you will have the opportunity to learn how to create basically a market research brief, and think about it from a workflow perspective. So we'll introduce some different kinds of tools, as well as, and more importantly, right, a framework for how to approach it, and how to get a lot of value out of it. Also co-editing, right? So creating, this gets into Jay's conversation about discernment and quality, but really how do you get to a one-page creative brief? And so it's more about the process of discernment, especially with using this tool as kind of a collaborator and what that means. And then we're also, developing creative artifacts, as you just saw. So, creating a mood board, a storyboard, a production board, shot list. And I know this is something that is near and dear to Jay's heart, and he will guide this particular module, as well as creating responsible guidelines. So something that we really want all of our students and professionals to think about is, how, especially, not only creating guidelines, but how do you take it a step further and really think through the prompting, the orchestration, right? Like these workflows around creating something that is ethical, or at least responsible in the way you approach it, and talking through what that even means. So we're super excited to share these different learnings and assets with all of you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for spending some time with us to hear kind of our discussion around this topic, and also allowing us to introduce this course to you. We do invite you to check out the course registration page. We're very, very happy and very grateful that CommLead has developed this course. And we also understand that this is part of something that is perhaps stackable, that some of you may be familiar with 901, our previous course about empowering marketing and communications with AI. We're expanding on that concept, and now we're talking about creative workflows, complex workflows, and we're excited because the roadmap allows us to continue on this discussion and continue serving and bringing up educational content for professionals, specifically around this very exciting topic. So thank you everyone for joining us today.